Let's talk about the first and perhaps the most liberating shift of all, the journey from approval, seeking to self-validation. If you look closely at the way toxic people operate, you'll notice one common thread. They feed on your need for acceptance. They sense when you crave acknowledgement, when you bend just a little too much for a smile, a word, or even a nod of approval. And the more you lean into their recognition, the more they tighten their grip on you. It's like oxygen to them. Without your approval seeking, their control weakens. Think about how early this conditioning starts. From childhood, we are told that love is something to be earned through good grades, obedience, or fitting into a role someone else wrote for us. We are taught to measure ourselves by the applause of others, not by the quiet assurance of our own worth. And when that belief system goes unchecked, we become adults constantly adjusting, constantly twisting ourselves to match the expectations of people who may not even respect us. This is the fertile ground where toxic relationships grow. They thrive in the soil of insecurity, because insecurity makes you dependent. But something remarkable happens when you reverse this conditioning. When you begin to validate yourself, you flip the power dynamic. Imagine walking into a room no longer asking, "Do they like me?" but instead grounding yourself in, "Do I like who I am in this moment?" That one change alters everything. You shift the center of gravity back to yourself. Suddenly, the toxic person cannot manipulate you with disapproval, because your sense of self is not up for negotiation. Self-validation is not arrogance. It is not the loud declaration of "I don't care what anyone thinks." It's quieter, subtler, and far more powerful than that. It's the inner voice that says, "I am enough as I am. My value doesn't fluctuate with someone else's opinion." When you operate from that space, toxic people sense it immediately. They realize that their favorite weapon, criticism, mockery, withdrawal of affection, no longer lands. You've disarmed them without ever confronting them, and here is the beautiful irony: they will often leave on their own, because a person who cannot manipulate you has no incentive to stay. Of course, this transformation requires courage. It means you have to sit with the discomfort of disapproval. You have to endure the silence when someone withholds validation you once craved. And you have to keep telling yourself that your worth doesn't depend on their reaction. Over time, something incredible happens. You build an unshakable foundation within. That inner strength radiates outward, and people, both toxic and healthy, can feel the difference. Toxic people walk away, while healthier connections begin to gravitate toward you, because authenticity is magnetic. The truth is, life becomes infinitely lighter when you stop carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations. You no longer waste energy trying to mold yourself into someone else's idea of enough. You no longer allow your identity to be shaped by fleeting applause. Instead, you stand in your own skin, comfortable, grounded, and free. And from that place, no toxic person can ever chain you again. So if you want one powerful change that forces toxic people to leave, start here. Stop asking the world to tell you who you are. Tell yourself, approve of yourself, validate yourself, because once you do, those who only stayed for the sake of control will realize they have no place in your life. And the moment you stop needing them, they stop owning you. Let's move to the second change, which is all about boundaries. You see, toxic people dislike boundaries because boundaries create clarity, and clarity limits their ability to manipulate. They thrive in spaces where the lines are blurred, where they can stretch your generosity, test your patience, and cross into your personal space without resistance. But the moment you draw a line with conviction, they suddenly realize that their playground has been reduced, and they don't enjoy that at all. The reason so many of us hesitate to create boundaries is because we confuse them with rejection. We think that saying no will make us unkind or selfish. We worry that by putting limits we will lose people, but the truth is boundaries are not about pushing others away. They are about protecting what is sacred within you. A life without boundaries is like a house without doors. Anyone can walk in, take what they please, and leave you with nothing. Boundaries are those doors. They don't lock everyone out. They simply allow you to decide who is welcome and under what conditions. Philosophically, boundaries are an act of self-respect. Psychologically, they are the framework of emotional safety. And spiritually, they are the affirmation that your soul has worth. When you say, "This is where I end and you begin," you are not being cruel, you are being clear. And clarity is one of the most compassionate things you can ever give to yourself and to others. Toxic people despise this because they cannot manipulate a person who stands firm in their limits. They may push back, they may mock you, or accuse you of being cold, but notice how often their reaction is not about your boundary. It's about the loss of their control. That is the signal that your boundary is working. But boundaries require courage, the same way self-validation does. You have to face the discomfort of people not liking your limits. You have to withstand the accusations, the sulking, and sometimes even the silent treatment. And yet, something remarkable happens when you hold steady. You begin to discover that your world does not collapse when you say no. People don't abandon you simply because you assert yourself. If they do, then they were never truly for you in the first place. The right people respect boundaries, the wrong people run from them. Either way, the truth comes to light. Think of boundaries as filters. They separate what nourishes you from what drains you. They allow love, respect, and kindness to enter, while keeping manipulation, exploitation, and toxicity outside. And when you live within those healthy filters, you not only protect yourself, you also teach others how to treat you. Every boundary is a silent lesson to the world. This is who I am, this is what I value, and this is how I deserve to be treated. And here lies the beautiful paradox. When you build boundaries, you actually create more space for authentic relationships. Because once toxic people are filtered out, you are left with those who can love you without overstepping, those who can respect you without needing to dominate. The space that was once occupied by conflict and drama becomes available for peace and connection. So if you want toxic people to leave, don't shout, don't fight, don't beg them to change. Simply draw your lines and then stand by them. They will leave not because you pushed them out, but because there is no room for them in the clarity of your self-respect. Remember this, boundaries are not barriers to love, they are the pathways to it. Now let's turn to something that might surprise you: silence. We often underestimate it, sometimes even misinterpret it. We confuse silence with weakness, with submission, with passivity, but silence, when chosen consciously, is not weakness at all. It is one of the greatest tools of strength and dignity. Toxic people hate silence because silence starves them. Their very survival depends on your reaction, your anger, your defense, your explanation. The louder you argue, the deeper they hook you. But the moment you stop giving them that energy, they suddenly have nothing left to feed on. Think about it. Every toxic interaction is a transaction. They offer provocation, and in return, they expect your reaction. If you refuse to engage, the transaction collapses. Without your participation, the game cannot continue. Silence is not about avoiding conflict out of fear. It's about refusing to dignify manipulation with a response. It's the art of saying, without words, "You do not deserve access to my peace." But silence must be intentional. There is a silence that suppresses, that hides pain, and that one is dangerous. That is the silence of fear. What I am talking about is very different. This silence is chosen, it is deliberate, and it carries weight. It comes from a place of inner stability, from knowing that your truth does not need constant defending. And this is why it feels so powerful, because when you choose silence, you are showing that you no longer need to win their approval, and you no longer fear their disapproval. You are centered in yourself. Philosophers often remind us that speech can be silver, but silence is gold. Why? Because silence creates space. In that space, you are no longer trapped in their storm. You step outside it. You create distance between their chaos and your clarity, and distance is exactly what toxic people cannot stand, because distance makes them irrelevant. Of course, silence is not easy. It takes immense discipline to not defend yourself when you are attacked, to not justify yourself when you are misunderstood. We are wired to want to explain, to correct, to protect our reputation. But when you truly realize that your worth is not defined by someone else's narrative, you no longer feel the need to fight every battle. And when you stop fighting, you win in the only way that matters, by keeping your peace intact. Toxic people will try harder at first. They will poke, provoke, and escalate when their usual tactics fail. But if you remain steady, if your silence is consistent, they eventually tire themselves out. Because remember, they are not interested in truth, they are only interested in reaction. And when there is no reaction, there is no reason for them to stay. They leave searching for another audience. In a world that glorifies noise, silence feels countercultural. But silence, in the right moment, speaks louder than any words ever could. It is a mirror that reflects the other person's behavior back to them. It forces them to confront themselves without your interference. And in that reflection, many toxic people cannot bear what they see. So if you want them to go, stop giving them the sound of your energy. Stop arguing, stop pleading, stop explaining. Stand in silence and let your peace be your answer. Because silence is not emptiness, it is presence. It says, I am here, I am whole, and I refuse to be moved by your chaos. And the truth is, silence has a way of ending conversations you never needed to have in the first place. If there is one thing toxic people are masters at, it is pulling you into emotional traps. They know which words sting, which gestures unsettle, which silences make you question yourself. They thrive on the hooks of emotion, because every strong reaction you give them is a thread they can tug on to control you. Anger, guilt, fear, these are the levers they use to keep you small, to keep you dependent, to keep you in their orbit. And so, the most powerful change you can make is to rise above those emotional hooks. This does not mean becoming emotionless. It does not mean hardening your heart or denying your feelings. On the contrary, it means gaining mastery over them so that your emotions serve you, instead of serving the agenda of someone else. The problem is not that you feel deeply. The problem is when your feelings are so easily provoked that anyone can hijack them. Toxic people sense this vulnerability immediately. They will push you to anger because they know you will say things you later regret. They will plant guilt in your heart because they know it makes you pliable. They will stir up fear because fear paralyzes and keeps you from acting freely. But imagine what happens when you step back, when you pause instead of reacting, when you let the bait dangle in front of you without biting it. That pause, that gap between provocation and reaction, is where your true freedom lies. It's in that space that you decide, this no longer controls me. I will not play this game. Suddenly, the toxic person's power collapses, because they cannot control someone who refuses to react on command. Psychologically, this is called emotional regulation, but at a deeper level, it is an act of reclaiming sovereignty over your soul. When you are no longer enslaved to your reflexes, you live with intentionality. You choose what deserves your energy and what does not. And here is the truth: not everything deserves your reaction. In fact, most things do not. Life is too short to bleed your energy on people who only come to feed on it. It takes discipline to reach this level of composure. It means you will sometimes sit in silence while your body wants to scream. It means you will breathe through the wave of anger instead of drowning in it. It means you will remind yourself, this guilt is not mine to carry, when someone tries to lay it at your feet. And the more you practice this, the stronger you become. Toxic people, who once seemed larger than life, suddenly shrink before your eyes. You see them for what they are, not giants of control, but children throwing tantrums, desperate for attention. And here's the beauty of it: when you refuse to get hooked, you stop dancing to their music. The cycle ends not because they decided to change, but because you decided to stop playing your part. Without your reaction, their performance has no audience, and eventually they walk away in search of someone else to manipulate. So rising above emotional hooks is not about ignoring your humanity. It is about protecting it. It is about standing in your power so firmly that no one else can pull you into storms you never asked to enter. Remember this: you cannot stop toxic people from throwing bait, but you can stop yourself from biting it. And the moment you do, their power over you dissolves into nothing. There is a strength that no toxic person can penetrate, and it comes from living with unshakable self-worth. If you notice carefully, everything we have spoken about so far, self, validation, boundaries, silence, rising above emotional hooks, all of it rests on this one foundation. Because if you do not believe in your own worth, you will always fall back into the traps of seeking approval, allowing lines to be crossed, reacting to every provocation. But when your sense of worth is rooted deeply within, you become unshakable. Toxic people thrive on convincing you that you are less than you are. They chip away at your confidence, they magnify your flaws, they minimize your strengths, and if they succeed, you begin to internalize their voice as your own. That is their ultimate victory, not the words they throw at you, but when those words start echoing inside your mind. But self-worth breaks that echo. It reminds you that no matter what anyone says, your value is not up for debate. True self-worth is not arrogance. It is not about inflating yourself or pretending to be perfect. It is about anchoring yourself in the truth that your dignity is intrinsic. You are not valuable because of what you achieve, or how you look, or what others think of you. You are valuable because you exist, because you are human, because you carry within you something sacred that no one else can take away. Once you grasp that, toxic people lose their leverage. They can insult, they can belittle, they can withdraw affection, but none of it penetrates because their words cannot reach the ground you stand on. Philosophically, this is freedom. To live without constantly negotiating your worth is to live without chains. And practically, it changes the way you move through the world. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Instead, you begin to show up fully, with calm certainty. And here is the paradox. The more you live with this quiet confidence, the more magnetic you become. People can sense authenticity. They are drawn to it. Toxic people, on the other hand, sense that they cannot break it, and so they retreat. But let's be honest, it is not easy to cultivate this kind of self-worth, especially if life has taught you the opposite. Especially if you've been told, directly or indirectly, that you are not enough. Building unshakable self-worth is not a one-time decision, it is a daily practice. It is the way you speak to yourself in the mirror. It is the way you honor your own needs without guilt. It is the way you forgive yourself for your imperfections while still holding yourself to growth. Every small act of self-respect is a brick, and over time, those bricks build a fortress. And inside that fortress, toxic people cannot enter. When you live with unshakable self-worth, you stop asking, "Why don't they value me?" And you start asking, "Why should I stay where I am not valued?" That shift alone changes everything. You stop clinging to people who diminish you, because you no longer mistake their presence for your validation. You realize that letting them go is not loss, it is liberation. So if you want to drive toxic people out of your life without lifting a finger, stand firm in your worth. Let it be unshakable, not because you never doubt, but because you never surrender to the doubt. Hold it like a torch inside you, and watch how quickly those who thrive in darkness disappear. And remember this, when you know your worth, no one else gets to write your value. At the heart of everything we've explored lies a simple but profound truth. Peace is a choice. And when you choose peace over chaos and remain loyal to that choice, something remarkable happens. Toxic people who survive on conflict suddenly find themselves out of place in your life. They thrive in noise, they thrive in arguments, they thrive in the drama of endless back and forth. But when you no longer provide that stage, when you guard your inner calm as your most valuable possession, they have no role left to play. We often underestimate how much of our life is drained by conflict, how much of our energy is spent defending ourselves, explaining ourselves, proving ourselves to people who have no interest in understanding us in the first place. This is the cycle toxic people love, because as long as you are engaged in their chaos, you are distracted from your own growth. But peace interrupts that pattern. Peace says, "I will not enter this storm. I will not waste myself here. My energy belongs to something higher." Choosing peace does not mean ignoring problems or pretending everything is fine. It means knowing which problems are truly yours to solve and which ones are traps designed to pull you in. It means recognizing that not every insult needs an answer, not every conflict needs a warrior, and not every fire deserves your water. Sometimes the most powerful response is to walk away with your calm intact. And let me tell you, that decision is not easy, because chaos can be addictive, arguments can be addictive, the adrenaline of being right, of defending yourself, of proving a point, it pulls you in. But at what cost every time you trade your calm for a moment of winning? You lose something far greater, your center. The discipline of peace is learning to value that center above everything else, to say, "My peace matters more than being right, more than being liked, more than being understood." Toxic people will notice this shift. At first, they may try harder to drag you back into the familiar storms. They will press your buttons, they will throw their words like darts, hoping to strike. But if you hold steady, if you remain anchored in calm, something changes. They realize they can no longer disturb your equilibrium, and when they realize they can no longer disturb you, they will leave, because without chaos they cannot survive. This is where the deepest freedom lies. When you commit to peace, your life begins to reorder itself. The wrong people fall away, and the right people draw near. You start to notice how much lighter your days feel, how much clearer your mind becomes, how much more energy you have for the things that truly matter. Peace is not passive, it is profoundly active. It requires you to choose, again and again, what is worth your attention and what is not. And over time, those choices build a life that feels steady, purposeful, and whole. In the end, toxic people do not leave because you fought them harder. They leave because you stopped fighting altogether. They leave because peace suffocates chaos, the way light dissolves darkness. And when you choose peace as your non-negotiable, you send out a silent but unshakable message. My soul is not your battlefield. And that is the final, powerful change. protecting your peace so fiercely that anyone who thrives on chaos finds no place beside you. So hold on to this. Peace is not weakness. Peace is not surrender. Peace is power, and when you choose it, the toxic will always choose to walk away.